How exactly is AI impacting market research? Can composite digital personas round out your research project? Mark Michelson can answer these questions and more. As founder of ThreadsMR, Mark has 42 years of marketing research experience with clients ranging from Google to Coca-Cola. Today, he bridges traditional research expertise with artificial intelligence, teaching professionals how to use AI tools without losing the human judgment that actually makes insights impactful. He's also founder of AI Collective Atlanta and heads the Southeast region for the Popular Group, where he focuses on practical AI education. If that wasn't enough, Mark's a professional musician and at one point fronted a Pink Floyd Led Zeppelin cover band appropriately named Pink Zeppelin. He's the next guest on High Intent, where we offer unfiltered lessons from the front lines of modern marketing. I'm your host, Justin Rubner. Let's do this. Well, Mark, thanks for joining High Intent. Very happy to have you on the show.
My pleasure.
We're going to be talking about research today, and I'm very glad to have you on. You've been doing this for 40 years?
42.
42. Okay, great. I want to get into the basics first. Your firm, ThreadsMR, conducts online and mobile qualitative and quantitative research. Let's get into the very basics here. Can we talk a little bit about the difference between qualitative and quantitative and their use cases as well as results?
Sure. I wrote an article on this once talking about qualitative and quantitative, and I'm going to share what the essence of that was. I think it demonstrates it well. A survey was done across the USA with all people. Let's say we had 1,000 something interviews, which gives you a confidence margin of plus or minus 3. That's where most all your national polls are done. Okay. And I just asked a simple question. What is your favorite color? Right? Nothing else. You'll find that purple will be in the top 10 easily. And among women, it'll be in the top 5 favorite colors. Right? If I only use that information to make decisions as a manufacturer for things like cars, how come there's not more purple cars on the road? That's because we didn't ask qualitatively, what do you think of someone who drives a purple car? And how would you feel driving a purple car? So qualitative is about feelings. It's about in the schools of anthropology, sociology, and psychology. Whereas survey research or quantitative research is predictive by nature. It's sampling. It's not a full census, but it is sampling a market so you can then make predictions and feel confident about those answers being within a confidence range. That confidence range is determined largely by the sample and more importantly, how the sample's drawn. For instance, in Atlanta, if you're trying to be representative of all of Atlanta, you wouldn't do everything in, say, Alpharetta and say that applies to all of Atlanta. It just wouldn't be true. You have to sample all over Atlanta, right?
Yeah. So, Mark, let's say we're doing some research on brand perception.
Mhm.
What would be an example of a qualitative result and a quantitative result in that research?
Okay, so one has to be assume they're already familiar with the brand to have a perception. So it's not an awareness study. You'd probably be dealing with someone who's in the category, buys in the category, and is familiar enough with the category to have a perception. Okay. So I might start off with qualitative and just ask what their feelings are. And a lot of times we'll use projective techniques in qualitative. In other words, it looks like this. If this brand were an animal, what kind of animal would it be and why? Right? Or if if this brand were a town or a city, what would describe that city? So you describe something else other than the thing you're talking about. Subconsciously, you're talking about that thing, right?
Right.
Once I understand some of the base perceptions, and I'm looking for the high end to the low end. So it's a little tiny town to nothing to it's a giant metropolitan, right? Once I understand that, then I can kind of quantify those things better. I can describe them more clearly to take to a survey and then find out how many people agree that it's one of these 5 perceptions
Okay.
and maybe even measure to the degree, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how well does this fit? Right. So you can get
Right.
that kind of scaling going on as well, Likert scales.
What are the different types of quantitative research?
In primary research, which is where we go out and do the questioning, all right, so we ask the questions. The primary method that we use is survey research. And survey research can, and it used to be a bunch of different types, like door to door was a thing when I was a kid. Then you had like mall intercepts and then telephone. And then that was wiped out by the internet. But, back in the 90s, we had these huge debates over whether or not telephone and internet were going to give similar results. Could we trust the internet to deliver reality, or at least something that is close to reality? So these big debates happened, and it turned out there was really no differences
Sure. People are people no matter what.
how they express it.
Right.
And we could do other things with online that we couldn't really do in person. And that would be like conjoint analyses where you like, if this, that, which of these two do you like best? Well, okay, then trade that out. Now, taking that one, look at this one. Which of these two do you like best?
That's conjoint.
Yeah, it's called trade-off analysis. So considered jointly is where it comes from, conjoint. Considered jointly between these two or three things, which one do you like and why? And we might just change features. That kind of stuff gets real complex when you're trying to analyze it and design a study in person. So internet allows us to do even more than we could before. Also in showing videos at scale. If you want people to look at a video and give a score on it of some type, be it a Likert scale or a scale of 1 to 5 or whatever. Now, the other thing that happens in quantitative is not only a survey, but in customer experience, a lot of these thumbs up and thumbs downs you see after every transaction, that's quantitative research as well. Okay. So that's on a customer experience measure in the touch points, whereas a survey of opinions, is a little bit different than, hey, I felt that this product was delivered correctly. It was complete. I like the product. I'm happy. That's a different kind of measure. And there's a lot of different smaller nuances within the actual question types. You might have heard of things like an NPS question, net promoter score, 0 to 10, and that has its own analytics, where you take the top 8 through 10s and then you subtract the ones that are 5s and below, come up with a score, right? And there's a lot of those types of question types that would come into play as well. The main advice I would ever give anyone is don't overload every question you can think of into a survey.
Sure.
Do them over time. Don't have more than about maybe 10 or 15 questions in any survey because people just burn out.
Do you find a lot of clients want to pack a gazillion questions in there?
Every one of them.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, what about this? And then you get some other department involved. All of a sudden, you got a 70-question survey. You're like, hey, come on.
Okay. All right. So 42 years you've been doing this. What is the biggest change that you've seen in how companies understand their customers?
Wow. There's a lot of them. I would say that coming to terms with using the web to understand people at scale. Okay. That's got to be the biggest change I've seen in my life so far. Right. So being able to reach people around the world and engage them in a long-term ethnographic diary study using mobile phones, we were doing that, the minute mobile phones came out, right? Because we had people that we needed to understand their daily rituals and habits regarding, say, skincare. And in particular, women, you can't go live with them very easily. They get routines all day long from the moment they wake up till the time they go to sleep. What products they're using, when, why. These aren't beauty products, these are skin care or prevention products. Now, huge differences between Japan and Brazil, even between Italy and Sweden. So if you're doing this in 30 countries over a period of, say, a month, and you've got maybe 30 or 40 people in each country at scale, we couldn't do that before mobile phones were available. We couldn't do that before we had the analytical capability to interpret all of these videos coming in and all these photos and comments. So that kind of stuff really revolutionized the marketing research industry, particularly on the qualitative. Quantitative, you used to have phone rooms of people. So they're going to dial people all the time. Telephone rooms, call centers.
Okay.
So they would do outbound telephone calls to get people to answer surveys. You can imagine the amount of labor just in not being able to connect with someone.
Sure.
And auto dialers and all this stuff going on. That whole almost entirely that industry is very small now. And it's targeted to really hard to reach geographic areas. Like if I have to do Wilmington Island or something, yeah, then I know I can just call in that area, right? But even now with mobile phones, it's hard to reach those people. The second coming, which we're still experiencing, is the AI revolution. Within AI, knowledge work in general is made a lot easier. And I'm talking about doing your analytics around both quantitative, using Python and all these types of tools. And we're used to using, Tableau and some of the other analytic tools. They're all built in within AI now.
Yeah.
And dealing with unstructured data, which is the nature of qualitative, it's a lot easier. I put all that stuff in a notebook and
Define trends automatically.
well, however I want to slice and dice, is up to me. And the thing is with qualitative, it's not predictive. It's not intended to be. It's more directional because it is emotional. It is what 1 or 10 people think, right? I wouldn't use that as a basis for a multi-million-dollar decision. I would find out what they think and then roll it out to survey to see how many people agree with those thoughts, right? And then get ready for a decision time.
Well, let's just get down to it. How is AI changing how companies do market research?
So the first thing that's happened is, when AI came around to the market in 23 and more widely adopted in 24, was a lot of experimentation on it. But the first thing that happened really in the research world was a lot of the existing platforms that we use as tools embedded AI in different areas to give you help with, editing some sort of comment or statement to actually designing a whole study. Right. So these tools have been out there. There's a whole world of research tech and technology. A lot of companies well invested into things like recruiting, hosting asynchronous focus groups, bulletin boards, mobile diaries.
An AI survey room?
Yeah, there's that too. I mean, you could have an AI survey room. And one of the more interesting developments that I took on really early back in 23 and 24 was the idea of synthetic respondents. Okay, so synthetic respondents come across on multiple layers. There's quantitative synthetic respondents where you're basically filling in missing surveys. So if I have a sample I need to reach of say 500 people, and there's really only 300 that are reachable, the other you try and try. Yeah, at some point you just exhaust your try. It doesn't match. The juice ain't worth the squeeze, right?
Of finding the extra people.
Yeah, right. So there's a way to model the data around the answers so you don't change any of the answers, but you can add in the additional people based on synthetic persona modeling or synthetic response modeling, right? Now, those two are thinly sliced. One means let's look at all the responses and then build our models around that, individual profiles, right? Because you don't want to amplify extremes on that kind of thing. And the other one is building a qualitative digital individual. And that comes in two flavors.
That sounds really weird, Mark.
It is. There's two flavors of that. One would be the composite digital persona. That's where we go out and find all the people we can that have a footprint, a digital footprint that are in that category. And it's usually hard to reach people. Now,
Sure.
I create that model based on, say, 5 or 10 people who are known in that industry. If, for instance, I just did something with countertops, right? So this is high-end countertops. We needed to talk to installers, to architects, to interior designers, and all those types of people, right? They're not easy to reach.
Yeah.
So I could create a digital persona that's a composite of the top 10 architects that use, marble countertops, right? They're known for it. They've got articles on it. And so I do a search for those people first, and then I take everything they ever wrote and put it into the digital persona.
All right. I did not know that this was a thing. What tool are you using to synthesize this?
You can use any of them. I like to use Notebook personally, right? I use a combination of Perplexity for my internal research. So the first, getting the persona built, I use Perplexity because it is sourced. The key to a good synthetic persona is having grounded data. So you know that that data is vetted. It's not just made up stuff. Unlike the kind of thing where you go and say, you are a architect, and you ask your AI to pretend it's an architect, right?
But it's actually grabbing stuff from her.
It's correct. It's
Right.
going back and it can bring that forth and say, as cited here in this article, this
Right.
is what they would believe. Now that's composite synthetics personas. Now there's another type.
Whoa. What do customers think about this when you say that,
Well,
I'm not interviewing real people, I'm interviewing a synthetic?
Well, you do a combination, so you don't really I wouldn't count on all synthetics to give you truth at this point, okay? But I would say it's a good supplement to other research. And a lot of times when we're doing the research, we may take the actual interview transcripts and build them into the models as well. Okay? So what happens in reality is we may do an interview with a real person at some point and say, hey, what do you think of this? We might spend an hour or two with them and capture the whole transcript. Now, that person's hard to reach. We can't go back to them after we have a new
Yeah.
through our concept or 5 ideas to change around, right? Like, what do we call it? What are your big concerns? We already know some of that. So we can then ask that persona those smaller questions along the way. There's another type I want to cover, and that's the digital twin. Digital twins in general, the phrase is misused or it's used a lot of ways. A digital twin is often used to just describe like a copy of myself, right? And I might even put a video on there. It looks just like me. It's made on Hey Jen, or even use my voice from 11 Labs. That's not the type of digital twin I'm talking about. There's another one that just says, hey, pretend you are a buyer at Best Buy, and that's not very specific. That's just kind of pretend you are that, and the model might pretend it. But if I wanted to go out, let's say I'm going to make a call to Best Buy, and I wanted to prepare myself for that, and I don't even know who exactly to talk to, right? I'm just making this up, but let's say I want to sell mystery shopping services to Best Buy. Well, first thing I want to do is who is in charge of the programs of mystery shopping? How are the decisions made? What is their history of mystery shopping? What would they think if mystery shoppers awarded their salespeople for saying the magic phrase, right?
Instead of just getting them in trouble.
Well, yeah, or doing an audit, right? So the thing is I created a whole board of directors of Best Buy, the real people. I just like, here's so and so. She's the CEO. Get everything she's ever written done. Compile it into a large document, right? A markdown document for that. I might then say, okay, let me have the marketing director, let me have the operations director, and go drill down to where it gets to the VP level or whoever's in charge of this program, right? I found out just by asking the persona, just asking these digital twins, I said, hey, what would you think if we had shoppers reward your employees for promoting a product or service? They said, if we found out that a vendor was doing that, we would cut off all relations with them immediately. I was like, whoa, why? We don't want that happening in our stores. We don't want them to, every vendor out there sending in mystery shoppers it's no control. There's chaos ensues, right? And now no longer the employees, they're just trying to win, right? So, and I was like, okay, well, what if, and I'm just talking with the twins, I'm like, what if we had a program where you're in control and the vendor of that month, whoever the featured company is, let's say it's Sony. I'm just making it up. Let's say it's Sony, right? And they got a new virtual headset. And so everyone in the company is trained to say, hey, have you tried the new virtual headset? Right. And if they just say that one thing, then they're rewarded. Now you're in control, Best Buy, of that. Right. And we're going to send the reward to your manager to deliver to them. They're like, oh, that's a great idea. We love it. So fine twists like that will prepare you for your eventual real world call with them. And you can practice your pitch.
So how has AI impacted what you do in the best way and the worst way?
Okay. I'll start with the best way. It's made analysis and design of studies a heck of a lot faster.
I can totally imagine. Yeah,
a lot faster. I mean, 100 times faster. I can't. There's no way at scale I could do what it's doing, right? That's the best. There's some interesting new tools too. I find that people will talk to an AI more truthfully often than they will to a human.
That's surprising
It is surprising,
to
but
me, at least.
I don't
Yeah.
know if they know it's an AI and they know it's anonymized, then they'll be like, okay, yeah, I've got some deep secrets or whatever to share.
Yeah.
It's odd, but that doesn't happen in real world.
I'm really a serial killer.
Yeah, well, for instance, I do a lot of work with cancer patients, right? And I have a big history with it. When you're dying and you're dying in the next 3 months, or your family knows you're dying in the next 3 months, you can't just talk about the cancer. You can't ask, hey, what do you feel like you're dying? It doesn't work that way. Instead, we use these projective techniques, right? So I might use pictures of landscapes and say, hey, before you were diagnosed, which one of these represents how you felt on an ongoing basis? Just pictures of landscape. Everything from volcanoes to islands,
Yeah.
So they can pick that out. Now, tell me what you see in this picture. They can talk about that all day long. They're really accessing their own emotions underneath that, how they felt before. Now, the moment you were diagnosed, where were you? It's usually the fiery kind of, or murky, foggy kind of thing, right? Talk about that. What do you see? And they talk about how they feel if they were there.
But generally, people are more open to an AI chatbot.
Yeah, just like they are with projective techniques. They
Yeah.
can't access and talk about what they can't really talk about, right?
Yeah.
Without breaking down entirely. But that's the good stuff. Now, the bad stuff is that a lot of clients are believing everything AI says. And there's a lot of hallucinations that happen if you're not dealing with better controls. For instance, I do all of my analytics in RAG systems where I'm in control of all data entry. Okay. I don't let it just go out to the web.
What is a RAG system?
Retrieval augmented generation. So Notebook is a great RAG tool.
Gotcha.
Because you can control the inputs and say, only deal with these documents I gave you. Don't go to the web, no hallucinations. It minimizes all that. Okay. It's grounded data. And I may put first party data in there, like my interview transcripts, right?
But you can't go out to the web.
Yeah, there's a way to, but I don't need to.
Mhm.
I don't want to, right? I want to deal with the data that I feed it. So that's vetted data, right? It's not just like made up something. And the AI will make up stuff and confidently lie to you all the time. So understanding what happens with that is key. And there's a lot of people that are working at companies that may go with whatever the AI says without understanding.
Could you give us an example of a lie?
Yeah, sure. What's the market opportunity for X? Okay. And there's a lot of people that are right now. I just saw something on, I think it was 60 Minutes or one of these. It was talking about this guy who had an idea for a business. He put it into AI. The AI told him it was brilliant. No one else in the world is doing what you're doing.
Uber for dogs?
Yeah, whatever it is, right? Exactly. Yeah, that sounds like a good one. So, he like literally dug into it, and the AI kept telling him, this is fantastic. There's no one doing it. The market opportunities, gazillion dollars, and all this stuff, right? Everyone's going to want your thing. Well, he gets a second and third mortgage on this thing, spends a year digging into it. And then finally, he's getting no sales, no traction whatsoever, nothing. Everyone's laughing at him like,
Dogs don't take Ubers.
well, ain't gonna be, it's not where we're interested in, right? And so, he finds out eventually. He goes back and says, hey, someone told him, say, ask your AI to be honest with you and tell you, what honestly, where are you getting this information from? And the AI came back and said, oh, I thought you were being hypothetical.
Well, if he was using ChatGPT loves everything you say. So
Right. Exactly. The whole sycophant thing led with the whole, confident lying. So that kind of stuff can get companies in trouble. And I think most have figured that out by now
Sure.
if they're dealing with it.
Just bad things.
Yeah, just bad things in general. There's other things that'll do, like it'll, you can get one answer on one AI with the exact same question, but in another AI, you get a different output.
Sure.
A lot of it has to do with your own personal settings you have in place in the exact same prompt, but also how the AI is trained, right? If it's trained on Grok data or on X data, it's going to be quite different than if it's trained on, let's say, encyclopedia data.
Yeah. What will always require humans in the world of research? I think I know how you're gonna answer this, but
You
what do you
might be
know anyways?
surprised. Food work, you know, tasting stuff, touching stuff, that is not yet feasible with AIs. Okay. So I just did some taste testing and concept to fit to brand for a large chain of restaurants across the country, right? So having people in a room, they can smell it, they can taste it, they can look at it, they give
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
in real time. That's not going away anytime soon.
Can we say it's not going away at all?
It's not going away at all. Well, now I don't know that I don't know that I can confidently say that because you can model the tone just like they've modeled neurons for AI. AI is basically a neuron model, right? So if you've got specialized neurons for things like sight and sound, which they have, right? It's just a matter of time, I think, before they have touch and smell is related to taste, right?
Huh?
So if they train it on these smells, which translates to taste, and it tastes a little different only in the sweetness and spicy areas, but they're connected really close to each other, smell like tongue and the nose, right? But the idea is that having those senses, those other senses is there. The other thing I think that it's never going to be able to approach is the idea of emotions. Okay. We don't even understand our emotions sometimes. They just hit us like the weather. You having a great day, all of a sudden, oh, whatever it is, throws you out of whack, right? Like I heard this one talk about an AI is like a baby, right? But when the baby falls out of the crib, it cries and there's consequence, right? When the AI falls out of the crib, there's no consequence. It doesn't feel it. It doesn't cry. It just keeps on going, right? That's a huge difference and a big gap for training AI models to be able to understand human emotion as well as the senses of touch and smell and taste. Now, I've seen some of the models trying to get to touch, right? Trying to fake skin and all this kind of stuff. It's interesting. It can deal hot and cold. It can do wet and dry, right? But when it gets the nuances like a silky smooth hair versus rough hair, it gets nuanced within those areas. And those are areas I can't say it won't ever, because there's a lot of people trying to do that. But particularly it's going to be helpful with robotics. If you're dealing with robotics and they have to be able to detect certain smells on, say, a battlefield or something, like a poisonous gas, right?
Sure.
Then it has to be trained on that, and then it can warn, troops behind it that that's happening.
VX is coming. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So that's another example.
Very cool. I'm going to avoid the ethical questions around human emotions because I think everyone's talking about that, but it had some pop in my head. Let's go to, all right, if I'm a CMO, how should AI change how I gather customer insights?
It would change only because it's going to be ordered a certain way. When I say ordered, the output is going to be structured a certain way, right? And it's kind of AI is kind of training us to think in terms of clean output, right?
Sure.
What is good structured output, right? I think it will go down an avenue and uncover some of the stuff that maybe is not being considered as far as different media channels and messaging, right? So if I'm a CMO, I'm looking at media, I'm looking at messaging, I'm looking at budget. What's my reach? What's my cost per person? And what's my message that's going to change someone's feeling about us some way or another, right? Or create a feeling if no one exists. Those areas, AI can really dig in and uncover what I call the ends on the bell curve, right? So everyone can get the middle of the bell curve, well, table stakes stuff, but it's out here on the fringes that AI can help uncover some stuff as far as ideas to explore. Now, whether that's a large enough market to go after, it'll give you some idea of that.
Give me an example.
Okay, so let's say I want to have a new chewing gum that's energy chewing gum, right? I'm just making that up. Energy chewing gum, right? And so I can go out there and do research on. I want to know all about the chewing gum market, who's chewing gum, and then I also want to know about the energy market, right? So I'm kind of synthesizing those two together. AI will do that more easily than I will to find the commonalities and
Yeah.
the disparate points of that idea, right? And it'll tell me, okay, well, look, chewing gum is good. It might appeal to kids. And we don't really want that. So it might appeal over here to, an adult who already chews gum to give that extra boost during the day where they, don't really want to drink a drink or something, but chewing a piece of gum for an afternoon is a good thing for them. but they don't want to be kept up all night. So it's kind of like fine line of the benefits and synthesizing two disparate ideas, right? So that would be one example just pops into my head immediately.
Cool. If you can only do one, what's more valuable? Would it be a focus group, a survey, or say analyzing conversations with customers from the product and sales teams? If you could only do one of these, would it be conversations, focus groups, or surveys?
It's going to be based on the objectives of what you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to solve around what? What are you going to do with the answers?
Let's for the sake of this, let's just say it's our positioning, we feel it's wrong and we're trying to improve our positioning.
Okay. So here's the thing about that. If I deal with my existing customers and salespeople, the salespeople alone, if you're relying on them to convey the truth of that conversation, they're going to make themselves look good.
Mhm.
Okay. No matter what. And the customers love us and they love me in particular. Now, is that the truth? I would begin to question that. But then I would go out and say, okay, if how about the people who are not doing business with us right now? Or maybe people who have done business with us and left? Are they good sources of information on position? Now, I could actually answer a lot of that without even talking to anybody because AI is good enough to understand positioning and it's good enough to understand most industries, right? So if I want to know how my positioning currently sits among the industry and what are those perceptions of it, AI will give me what it has and what it's trained on, and again the sources of what it has, right? It's not just making stuff up. It's according to this journal in this place. Here's what they say about this, right? Now, I would start off by talking to AI and see how it thinks positioning is currently, right? And I might ask it, what are some opportunities that you see in openings for my product line or service line
Mhm.
in that area? That's not, that has a good opportunity. And it might reveal some of those, but then I have to go out and explore or examine those opportunities, right? Let's say I take the low hanging fruit and it says, wow, you're missing a whole world market out here with 18 to 24-year-olds. If you just shift this color in your whatever. Right? And I'm like, okay, maybe that's true, but I need to go talk to those people and those people who have never been my customers. I want to be able to get their actual feedback to concepts without swaying them one way or another. So I have to present that concept along with like 3 or 4 others. So they're not just living in a vacuum. Hey, what do you think of this? Yeah. So which one of these do you like and why? Right. So to answer the question, what is the best survey? No, I would say not. Okay. Because I don't know which questions to ask yet. Right. I would say that the source of talking to my own salespeople is probably going to be biased, is unless I have really direct input from them on stuff like transcripts, right?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. You're listening to calls.
All right, so if I have transcripts, I can put those transcripts in and bypass the salesperson, right?
Mhm.
But typically, are those outgoing sales calls or are those incoming complaints? I have to understand why are they having this conversation? If it's a sales call and it's recorded, then I can sort of see what the salesperson's positioning the company as and whether the company perceives it, the customer, the target customer, do they perceive that same positioning or where are they pushing back? So if that's the case, that's cheap data. It's already existing in call center or wherever that's
You
saved.
won't have to pay for it. Yeah.
Right, right. I'm going to go towards options first so I don't have to pay for it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, as I whittle it down, there might come a time where I say, I really need to talk to people to
Yeah.
see what they think about this before I make a decision or a recommendation.
So for the initial research, you would go and analyze the calls and maybe use AI to synthesize it, right?
Yeah, yeah, AI
Yeah.
can definitely synthesize.
And then you're going to be probably left with more questions, more fine-tuned questions after that, in which case you could potentially do a survey.
Yeah, and I also want to look at, size or opportunity. If it's repetitive and comes up all the time, serendipitously, then it's something to look at, right? If it's just one person's idea and no one's really resonating that or echoing it, then I don't want to pursue that
Yep.
in many cases. But then again, research is one of those weird things, we can only deal with what we know now. And if we'd asked that question, you remember when smartphones came around? Well, your first thought was, "I've got a camera, I've got a phone, I've got an iPod, got all these things. I've got a GPS. Why do I need all that, in a phone?" Yeah. What? So Steve Jobs is famous for never doing any research at all. He just refused to do it. And Apple still has that kind of way of going about themselves, right? But if we'd asked the question, then they may have not made the smartphone.
That's
If you ask
true.
questions about flying,
Yeah.
how would you feel about getting into a metallic tube with these, jet engines, strapped onto wings and people, throw peanuts at you, crammed into a seat?
Yeah.
No. So, a lot of times we can't even access what we're asking.
Yeah. That's Apple's a very interesting example on that. I definitely have a strong feeling on this, but I'm going to ask you, as marketers, are we becoming overly reliant on analytics dashboards to the point where we're not spending enough time actually understanding and talking to customers?
That's true in customer experience more than in, marketing directors, right? In customer experience world, I mean, they're measuring every interaction, every touch point is being measured, right? Somewhere or another, either through voice of customer or through operations metrics, right? So, what they're doing there is they're trying to figure out what's broken. Is there something wrong? Is it systemic? And what's the cause, right? So we can correct it. Don't just put a band-aid on it and don't ignore it. So dashboards for customer experience people are important, like having an alarm that goes off.
Hmm.
It's kind of like, I've got sensors in the world, and if one of them tings a little bit, I've got a problem, right? Well, then I have to go examine that problem and dig into it a little more. So as a first stage kind of alarm system, I think it's good to have dashboards, especially the ones that will notify who needs to be notified down the line. Now, I'm used to dealing with large, retail chains like Walmart, where they have districts, divisions, regions, everything you can imagine, and directors of those, even down to departments, right? So we can make that message go to the right person, direct it to whoever needs to be notified to fix it is notified, right? And now that's within the world of CX, which is kind of in marketing and also not, because customer experience, is supposed to be systemic to the whole company.
Sure.
But in large part, it lives in operations, not marketing. Marketing is what creates the expectations we have around a company, right? And those expectations have to be delivered by operations. And CX, I see, is fitting in between those two to make sure we're not making stuff we can't sell and make sure we're not selling stuff we can't make. CX kind of was created it with that in mind, but it became such a point of let's measure everything in the world. And if you don't buy our $1 million subscription to our platform, you're not doing CX right. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that also was a fallacy because now you're basically training people how to make dashboards instead of understand what the data is saying.
Mhm.
Now the data may give you an alarm, and there's an alarm going off, and so you upstream the message or whatever. But what is the cause? Getting into that level of repair or correction, takes a little digging deeper. So we ask these questions of metrics like a scale of 1 to 10 or scale of 0 to 10, right? I'm going to ask you to give it a rating, but I'm only doing that to anchor you. I really want to know why you gave it that rating. And that's an open ended comment. AI can now translate those and analyze that in the moment at scale. And I remember not too long ago, not more than 6 years ago, or maybe seven, that there was a whole bunch of tool makers out there creating tools just to read those comments at scale so that people could make decisions faster.
Faster. Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
Now AI, it does that, pretty much instantly.
Yeah.
Right. But again, it all depends on data being fed in, right? So, you want to have a specialized tool looking at that, not something that's going to hallucinate and add to whatever is coming from the field.
What would you say is a waste of money right now in research?
Ah, gosh, that's a good one. Well, I hate to say it, but sometimes these incentives get out of control and the recruiting costs get out of control. So trying to recruit in the really hardest to reach people for traditional research is a waste of time. Getting surgeons to show up at a focus group facility, it's a waste of time. I've had to do that many, many, many times. It's a lot easier to go to them wherever they are.
And do a one-on-one.
Correct. Do one-on-ones or dyads or triads.
Mhm.
Those traditional study design, trying to apply it to the real world doesn't work always. You got to be creative in how you get information from the qualified people. And paying them a lot of money is not always the right way to go, right? Sometimes they'll do it because they're interested in the topic. I'd rather talk to someone on that than just because I'm giving them 500 bucks. So that I think is an area of work that we have come to as researchers, get lazy and we're like, just pay them more money. You'll get them. I got to get those last 10 people, to interview, right? Throw more money at them, find them on the golf course. I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that I think is an area that needs some help. Secondly, is just this whole idea of competitive intelligence, right? And that's a whole industry. And I have friends in that industry. And I think that a lot of that as a general thought is available on the web because you're dealing with what's going to be publicly available anyhow.
You still
Competitive,
have to synthesize. You still have to find it and synthesize it.
yeah, but a competitive intelligence professional can't pretend they're a customer in mystery shopping. That's unethical. Right. So the AI will deliver a lot of stuff that you might try to get by mystery shopping, like pricing, or like what's their main pitch? What's their benefit draw they're doing now? Buy one, get one free offer, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
AI does a pretty good job of answering those questions if it's publicly available information.
Right.
You don't need to spend money on that. In
Yeah.
the past, just think of all the different subscriptions you had to have to different, industry journals and so forth to be able to get information. For instance, when I don't know, I used to have to subscribe to Arbitron and Nielsen just to get the radio
Sure.
to be able to make media buys. And nowadays, a lot of this stuff is available without subscriptions.
Yeah. That's really good insight. I would not have thought of those two things, but competitive insight and going out of your way to pay people to be a part of a focus group or something.
Hmm.
Yep. Okay. All right. So we are drowning in customer data, feedback, etc., website analytics, even social listening tools I've used. Why do so many companies still struggle to understand their customers?
First of all, a company has a lot of different kinds of customers, right? Typically, unless you're hugely, all I do are root canals. If that's your thing, it doesn't matter who your customer is, just knowing that you're just a root canal person, right? But if you're like a dentist in your market area, right? I want to know at that level who's in my market, and I've got my regular customers, so I want to make sure they're happy. So just some sort of informal, hey, have we do today, kind of thing, as well as how do I get new people? Right, those are two marketing initiatives: keeping who I've got and getting more like them. So I might have to do a little bit of research, and that's a good example for someone with very little budget, right? But how can I get more people in my market who are just like my customers? And I might float out some promotional concepts among my existing customers to use them to get more customers. So testing that idea, you could do it one of several ways. You could either just come up with it and try it. That's not a bad way to go because you're actually doing something as you're learning. Right? And the other way is to examine it, through the lens of an AI and say, okay, this is my market area. Who are they? Who are these people? Who is the main dentist? For instance, you can go in there right now and just say, give me the top 3 dentists in X zip code. And it'll tell you if these people are most visible because they have websites or they have, more traffic or they claim to do X, right? And that's all based on their own claims and their own communication of who they are, as well as maybe some reviews. And it'll read those reviews too. So the dentist, whether or not they're taking time to even examine existing data is a question, because I can go out there, even though you're saying we're all swimming in data, But knowing that you can go and say, who are the top 3 dentists in this zip code, or maybe the 4 adjacent zip codes, right? What are they doing that people like? Why are they the top? Is it because they're cheap or is it because they're good? Why are they going there? So you can interpret a lot of the comments and see if people are happy with them or not. You can interpret some of the things that they're putting out on the web and then make some sort of hypotheses from that, right? And as a dentist, you're not dealing with multi-million-dollar budgets for marketing. You're dealing with a small ship that can turn on a dime. So you can actually just go try those things, right? But you don't know what to try until you see what others are doing. You're known as a high-end dentist that deals with, cosmetic dentistry, right? Whatever. And all of a sudden you're offering a 2 for 1 on, wisdom teeth.
Doesn't trap. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to find your place, I think is what you can do with that. And you're only going to do it through examining these data and asking the right questions. That's the biggest problem with most marketers, is not asking the right questions.
Yep. After 4 decades of work
Mm.
studying human behavior, what is the most important thing that you've learned about people?
I think most people want to give you their real opinion, their real feeling about stuff. Many of them are doing it in an unfiltered way. If you don't let them tell you what they want to tell you, because your questionnaire or line of questioning is so narrow that it doesn't allow them to answer that, they're not happy about that. When I look around a focus group or whatever it is, right? I can tell someone's come there really ready to share whatever they want to share. And my line of questioning might have nothing to do with what they want to share, but they've got to get that out, right? And they're not really ready to listen to anything until they get that out.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it comes down to making people feel valued and that their opinions are important, right? And so then setting up your design, your research design, to let them blow steam, let them do whatever they need to do to
Let them
vent.
talk about whatever's on their mind.
Yeah. So let them get that off their chest early. And so that way you can go into the conversations you need to have about whatever your ideas are, to go to market, right?
I
And
don't
you
think
never know.
your Coke machine has enough CO2.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, exactly. That damn thing doesn't even give me the Coke after I put in the $1.50 or whatever, right? So whatever that is, they're not going to pay attention until they say what they want to say.
Right. Okay.
And that's almost universal.
Yeah. Your parting wisdom for any company, B2B, B2C, CPG, whatever, that is looking to do its first round of research. What is your parting wisdom to them?
Know what you're going to do with the research before you get it. All right. So don't do research just for the sake of doing research, and don't ask questions you can't do anything about.
Okay.
That's it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many times I see proposals come down. We need to do this research, and I'm going, why is
What are you going to do with this? Yeah.
what are you gonna do with it? What
Mhm.
what can you possibly do with whatever answers we give you? And are you willing to do any of those things?
Yeah.
If you're asking to do this research, because a lot of research is political internally. So this one department wants to do this thing, or this one person has an idea. Everyone else is like, nah, that's not gonna work. How about my idea? Right. So that's where research comes into play, usually to kind of solve those internal disagreements, right? And decide on a direction. So don't do research that you already know the answer to just to prove it to others,
Okay.
right? I can go out and hire actors, and I've had that asked of me before from ad agencies. Go hire some bunch of actors, tell us how great the ad is.
Don't do research on something that you know is true.
Yeah.
What's if no one else at the company knows it's true?
Then there's ways to get that across. I mean, there's other ways than spending a whole bunch of money on a focus group or whatever,
Okay.
right? For instance, I could just
I've been faced with this dilemma personally.
yeah, exactly. Try to bring together a competitive analysis. There's so many creative ways to do with AI. I can go out right now and do a digital twin on anyone who has a digital footprint, right? So if I want to, I could create digital twins of my competitors if they have enough digital footprint, and I can have them tell the story.
Okay.
There's lots of ways to make that happen to convince your team, right? And if the team doesn't like you for whatever reason, it's just not going to work anyhow.
Hmm.
I mean, you're kind of doomed from the start. Even if the research says everything in the world's great and dandy, if whoever is up above says, I don't care what he thinks so much,
Yeah,
it's for waste.
sure. That makes sense. Well, Mark, thanks so much for being on. I've learned a lot of things, and I think listeners are going to learn a thing or two as well. How can people get in touch with you?
I would say that my website's a good place to start, threadsmr.com. It stands for Threads Marketing Research. And there's not a lot on the site. Best way is use the site, learn a little bit about what I do and what my company does. But then, reach out, email, phone, LinkedIn, or come to any one of the events that I run, across the region.
Including the AI Collective.
Yeah, those are, I like in-person stuff personally. It's just, it gets me out of my place. But, start the conversation. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no such thing as a wrong question. And so asking questions and being curious is where it starts. And then, when you approach a professional researcher, you're like, okay, either companies already have an idea of what they need to research, right? And that they have an RFP in mind with objectives and all that, or they're just like, I have this feeling that this thing may be a good opportunity. How do we figure it out?
Yeah.
So I'd rather deal with someone at that stage where they don't have a prescribed approach to doing the research as a commodity, right? Here, bid on this. This is what we're doing. You're going to bid on recruiting 10 people that fit this criteria for 5 focus groups, blah, 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 right? I see that all the time. And I'm like, well, is that the best way to do it? I don't know. Until I know the objectives and I know the context of what you're going to do with this information. It's sort of silly to just answer a RFP for commodity style production.
Agreed. Well, Mark, I'm sure I will see you at AI Collective meetings going forward. And thanks again for being on.
My pleasure.
All right.
Enjoyed it, Justin.